Hi guys, good evening. Very good evening to all of you. We have received a very huge turnout for this particular webinar. All thanks to Venu and the topic basically sports analytics and technology. We see a lot of enthusiasts like you, who want to make a career in this field, and Venu is here to help you guys out. So talking about to anyone who's coming to Mad About Sports platform for the first time, we introduce ourselves as a platform which helps sports buffs like yourselves to make a career in the field. We provide short-term courses, webinars like these short-term courses in the field of sports management, be it sports analytics, sports technology, sports marketing, sports event management. So we have a lot of such courses with experts like Venu. So this is about us. Now talking about Venu, talking about today's webinar, it's on sports analytics and technology, and Venu will be covering it. So giving a very short introduction about Venu, he is a person who needs not much introduction, to be honest, in the sports industry in India. He is a sports marketing and analytics consultant. Uh, Presently, he is working with Fanisco as a digital fan engagement strategist, and also he has worked as a performance analyst previously, and also as an analyst with a lot of companies, organizations, and teams like Catapult, Huddle, Bharat FC, Maharashtra Premier League. So this is about Venu. So I'll give the mic over to him. Venu, you can start the webinar now.
Thank you, Aditya. That was quite a generous introduction. So whoever is watching on YouTube, thank you guys. Thanks for coming in and taking out the time today. And thanks Aditya and Madapod Sports for the opportunity. It's quite an honor to be here and be called as an expert. Although I'm still learning the tricks of the trade, and this industry, as you all know, is a booming one. Sports has definitely come a long way. In terms of technology and analytics being used in it, it's quite a competitive playing field now, and it's not like how it used to be, say 20 years back when we guys were growing up. It was more of recreation, but now I think sports has completely taken off to another level with so many leagues coming up, with so much of professionalism coming in, and the technology scope is kind of increasing and broadening every day. And so that's something which I'm going to talk about today, using my experience and how I ventured into this field, and just share my story so that you guys can also have an idea in terms of, if you want to navigate into this profession, what all steps you could take, and what's the high level things that you need to know. So basically, since it's a very short webinar today, so it's difficult to cover everything in detail, but what I'll try to do is just give you a high level overview of what this industry is all about, and how you could look at making sports or sports technology or sports analytics a career for yourself. And that's something which a lot of people ask me every day, on LinkedIn, or even whenever I meet some students when I'm doing some lectures at Symbiosis, or or GISB and other institutions. So that's something which is a very relevant question, and it doesn't have a one straight answer, but I'll try and answer it to you through this webinar. So that's the whole idea. All right, I think we are good to go. So yeah, let's start off. As you can see, the table of contents for today, we will be looking at broadly the sports technology scope. We'll be looking at who are the stakeholders who are concerned with sports technology. A bit of an Indian market overview, since I realized that we have a lot of participants joining us from India. So I'll be kind of covering that in detail. And then a bit of overview of performance analysis in sport, in terms of what is performance analysis, what all does it entail, what does the coach think, what does an analyst do, everything that is concerned with performance analysis. Digging a little deep after performance analysis, we'll be touching a bit about athlete tracking. So I've worked with a famous company called Catapult Sports, which is into GPS-based athlete tracking solutions, and I think that was quite a big experience for me to kind of learn the tricks of the trade, because I'm no strength and conditioning expert or a fitness coach, but then that experience taught me a lot about how athletes could use technology to kind of look at injury management, look at strength and conditioning, look at giving their best on the pitch, both on the on the field of play, but during the training games as well as during training as well as during the games. And in my current role with Fanisco, I'm doing a bit of digital fan engagement. And I think that's something which I'll be covering because that is something which is the need of the hour. And I believe that that's a topic, and tech in this space is actually going to be a big boom in the next coming 2 to 3 years. With COVID happening the past year, and 2020 being the way it was, it has actually changed a lot of things in this arena, and digital fan engagement is kind of booming like anything in the market right now. And of course, in the end, we'll just briefly touch about what are the benefits of using technology in sports. So when it comes to scope, these are some of the areas that we are covering today. The star marked ones are the ones which we'll be touching upon. We can't cover everything, but we'll try and focus on the top three, which is performance analysis or sports analytics, athlete tracking using wearable devices, as well as digital fan engagement solutions. Okay, so what you see on the screen right now is basically a word cloud, in the center, and around it is basically all the stakeholders that are involved, in the areas of sports and technology. So I think this is important to understand in terms of when we talk about technology, when we talk about analytics, who all are concerned or involved in sports analytics and sports technology. That is the most important aspect. Uh, First of all, it's broadcasters, teams, players, analysts, research institutions and universities. Everybody is concerned with sports technology and analytics because nowadays, if you see, like I mentioned before, sports has become so professional. Everybody wants some data around what's happening in sport, in their own games, with their athletes and stuff. So, everybody wants that kind of an overview and the 360-degree feedback system. So we have performance analysis, we have strength and conditioning, we have injury prevention. So these are the three basic pillars of professional sport. Technology is also being used around in education, in fan engagement, and also in research labs. So, I spoke about Catapult, the company which does GPS tracking. But where, what also happens is, and in the back end, there's a lot of research which goes around in terms of making these technologies. So I think that's something which is important to understand. Right. If you have any questions, guys, please keep posting on the YouTube feed. And I think, Aditya or somebody from Mad About Sports will post it on the Zoom chat window here. So please feel free to, pitch in
Yes,
whenever you
Venu,
want
we
to.
already have a
Yeah,
lot of questions. I'll keep posting them, and Shubhan and
sure.
keep posting them as soon as we get it.
All right. That'll be great. Thanks, Aditya. Okay, I'll just check the chat window every now and then so that I'll just make sure there's no questions unanswered. All right. Thanks, Aditya. Cool. So yeah, I spoke about India as a market for sports technology. I think I'll briefly touch upon that for the time being. So why are we looking at India as a big market now? Obviously, our population is one of the reasons. There's so much of scope for expansion of sport, and what has happened now. It's become an emerging market with a lot of maturity, which is growing around technology awareness. And there's a lot of acceptance of technologies now. If you see, when I started off my career, and I started off in India, currently I'm in Canada, but when I started off my stint in sports technology, it was somewhere around 2010, 2011. And that time it was a very, very amateurish market, or an upcoming market, if I could say so that way. So not many people had an idea in terms of what kind of technologies exist, and how do we use it. So that was the phase that I actually started venturing into the industry. And now if you see, there's so much of leagues which is coming, the IPL, the ISL, Hockey India League, I League, tennis leagues, and pro kabaddi leagues. In fact, kabaddi has become such a big sport. So, that's so heartening to see it. The sport which was a very, very specific, specialized sport for, the Indian village audience, which we used to play in the streets and stuff. It's now become on the big stage thanks to Star Sports and thanks to a lot of marketing that has happened around it. So, it's so heartening to see, different sports coming up in the form of these professional leagues. The next point is actually very, very important. The foreign coaches' influence, not to demean our Indian coaches by any means, but it's just that technologies were being used, say in countries like Australia and UK and US. During the time when I was trying to venture into this sports market, and so those coaches were hired to come and participate or coach teams in the IPL, in the ISL, and all these leagues. So they had a complete know-how of what technology is being used elsewhere. And then they brought the same technologies to the Indian market as well, which was quite a big achievement because I thought that we were we were kind of there and thereabouts, but when we started using these technologies, we started getting a lot of attention, and we started getting a lot of influence by these technologies as well. And I think the most important element is we are living in the world of AI. So there's a lot of automated reporting happening and less human intervention. So I think that is the most heartening part of technology in sport, wherein it's kind of reducing the donkey work that people do or analysts do typically. So I think that's something which is quite impressive. So yeah, in a nutshell, if I could say so, technology in sports are the future, and it's here to stay. So I think that's pretty much about where we are at the moment, and I think we are living in exciting times. So it's quite interesting the way the world is, the world of sport has kind of developed and moving forward. So it's an interesting world that we are in. I'll just quickly check the chat window once again, in case if there's any questions. All right, nothing yet. Cool. All right, so the first topic for today is performance analysis, guys, which is the use of video and statistical analysis in sport.
Venu, sorry to interrupt.
Yep.
So there were
Mm-hmm.
a couple of questions, but it
Sure.
was mostly career related. So I think
Okay.
you'll be covering it in the slides. So
Yes, that's correct. That's right. Yeah. All right. So, guys, career-related questions I'll be coming up towards the end, and I'll be covering a bit of that in the slides as well, in terms of who can become an analyst, how can you enter the industry and stuff. Cool. Thanks, Aditya. All right. So when it comes to performance analysis, I think like we mentioned before, there are various stakeholders in performance analysis in sports. So who are the stakeholders who are involved, or who are concerned with performance analysis? So I think the first and foremost is a no-brainer, which is the coach. I think the coach dictates what he or she wants from the players, from the analytics, and what they want to see at the end of the game. So it could be, if it's a cricket match, it could be as simple as looking at, your wagon wheels or your pitch maps for specific bowlers. It could be contests within a contest. For example, it could be, say, a batsman versus bowler. Now we have India versus England coming up. So it could be, say, Ravi Ashwin versus Virat versus Joe Root. And, it could be Virat Kohli versus James Anderson. So, so those are the things which are kind of interesting for the coaches to understand, contest versus within a contest versus, looking at the overall team performance and the overall player performances. So the coach is the main stakeholder, or the main man or the woman, or the, person who is associated with performance analysis. Second is players. I think every player is wanting feedback. They want to understand where they are going right or wrong, and how do they improve. And I think that's the most important aspect of performance analysis, that it's always about not finding your mistakes, but always looking to improve, how you can do things differently. And that's the most important aspect of performance analysis. Franchise owners and management, again, a no-brainer. It's sports, like I mentioned, is quite professional now, and the leagues have become a proper business. It's not just recreation anymore. So the league owners or the franchise owners, they want a complete update, or they want a complete report on what their players are doing, whom to buy, whom to not buy, which is also covered in the next point, which is scouting agencies, because scouts, player scouting agencies, they kind of give that information to the franchise owners and management in terms of who's performing, who's not performing, who's the player to look out for, watch out for. Those are the kind of things which are involved. And of course, broadcasters, because we as common fans, when we are watching sport on television, you could see that broadcasters use so much of technology to kind of bring a lot of rich content to people who are watching sport. So I think that's the important aspect of looking at the overall stakeholders who are involved in performance analysis in sport. I think I see a few questions or comments. Okay, Stephanie from UK, how do you think foreign coaching analysis have impacted onto how you improve? And do you think you're getting the same level as other countries? So it's interesting, Stephanie. Again, when I mentioned about foreign coaches, it was more about the technology, part of it. But again, when it comes to the analysis part of it, it's pretty individualistic. It's not about something that is being done elsewhere would work here, right? So I think that was a very important learning that I understood. The way I mean, if I could take, say, an example of cricket, right? The way we analyze a game of cricket, which is played in India, will be way different than how it is analyzed, say, it is in UK or in Australia, because, obviously playing conditions are different, standards are different, the teams are different, and how a sport is played in a particular country is different. So, strategically, there are different things which are there to be analyzed. But yes, the foreign coaches did have an impact on me in terms of how they look at things. So obviously, how I used to overall look at it is using the best of both worlds. Using my gut feel and knowledge as well as my understanding of analytics, and using the best of what they bring to the table as well. So it was a combination of the two. If I answered it correctly. Do sports other than cricket have a good amount of structured data? Yes, they definitely have. I think that's cricket. Obviously, it's a very stats driven sport. There's a lot of statistics that can be derived, but football as well, there are more than 300,000 data points which can be derived in a football game of 90 minutes. So all sports have some kind of structured data which can be analyzed and derived. It's all about understanding what the coach wants, what the team wants, and how as an analyst, how you can make a difference. How do you get the data set of a cricket match and how to extract? I think that's a very software oriented question, if I may put it that way. Again, there are multiple softwares which the analysts use, and they do a ball by ball entry of data into the system, and then you kind of get a lot of data that you can extract from. What's the pathway to become a sports or cricket analyst? I'll come to that one. Thank you. That is a career oriented question. I'll just come to that one soon. All right, thank you guys. Thanks for the questions. Keep them coming. So if I look at performance analysis in sports, and again, this is my overall definition of how performance analysis can be looked at. I'll just break it down into simple components, and I'll not give a very, bookish definition. In simple terms, it's actually a journey from gathering data to filtering out information. Okay, so now here's my question to the audience, and Aditya, maybe you can just, look out for the comments. So if you could say, if you could just tell me, from the audience side, what is the difference between data and information? I'll just take a moment to kind of wait for the answers.
So Venu, Jagan says that knowledge acquired from data is information.
All right. Anybody
Information
else?
is data structured, so it becomes of some use to us. Basically, structured data is information, is what Ashmit says.
All right.
Shiva
Interesting.
says
Yep.
that data is information which is analyzed. So
all right.
Data
Right. I mean,
is yeah, you get the hint of it. Data.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think all of you are correct in some way or the other. Like I said, there's no right or wrong definition. So I think data, and I think you guys also asked a question previously in the previous slide, how to extract data and stuff. So the important aspect for an analyst or a team, is not just getting the data, but also filtering out the information element from the data. For example, I'll give you an example from a cricketing term. If I say that, I'm a bowler, who has bowled for the last 5 years, and maximum of my dismissals have been bowled in LBWs, what does that tell you? In simple terms, it tells me that, that I bowl predominantly wicket to wicket, and that's my primary mode of dismissal, a bowled or an LBW. That's how I do it. Okay, I see one more comment. Data is raw, while information is something which is derived from the analysis. Absolutely right. Yes. Correct. So yeah, so basically, that was one example. Another example is that, say Suresh Raina, he had issues with the short ball at some point of his career, right? So data would tell me that, he was out, for under double figures for 3 consecutive innings, information would tell me that he was out of a short ball, fending it to say short leg, or trying to pull it and getting caught at square leg and stuff. So that's information, right? So it's kind of filtering out raw data and not just looking at the outcome, but also how the outcome happened. So, and that's kind of doing an analysis of what led from point A to point B. What was the journey? Why did this happen? So that's the kind of analysis that we do as analysts. Again, it's a journey from browsing statistics to analyzing opportunities. And again, all that information is useful, but then how do we understand what is the opportunity here for the team to kind of do better? That's the whole idea of doing performance analysis. Finding mistakes to learning from mistakes. This is actually a very important aspect of performance analysis, because a lot of the teams, and especially a lot of upcoming analysts and young people, think that performance analysis is all about finding mistakes. I'm sorry, that's not the right way to look at it. It's all about learning. It's all about how do we get better, how do we improve. That's the whole idea around performance analysis, and I think that's something which we all need to understand, because what happens if we look at it negatively by looking at it, how do we find mistakes? Then it's kind of going out for a lost cause. The teams, the coaches, then it kind of creates a negative environment wherein the players would start thinking the coach is just coming to me and saying that I did this wrong, I did that wrong, but then he's not telling me how do I do this, how do I actually make the right move. So that's the important aspect about learning from the mistakes instead of just finding the mistake. And again, the most important aspect, from performance to progress. You can do all the analysis in the world, but then if the team is not progressing, there's no point of doing performance analysis. So I think that's the whole idea behind performance analysis. Like I said, I've just broken it down into these 4 aspects. How do we look at the coaching process when it comes to performance analysis? So the first thing which happens, around the coaching thing is the performance, which is the on-field performance. So here is where the coach sees what's happening. Then there is a bit of an evaluation happening with the analyst. We come back to the drawing board, we come back to the dressing room, we look at the videos, and then there is a coach and player interaction. That's where the analyst and the coach sit with the player or the players together, doing a joint presentation and showing what were the opportunities that we grabbed in the last game, or where were the opportunities that we missed, and how could we improve. And then that interaction and that learning is then taken to the last stage, which is on field and off field interactions, kind of learning. So the same learnings that we looked in the interaction element, we kind of take it to the field. For example, when I was Bharat FC, a football club, there was a really good case study during the tournament, right? So we had a few parameters set by the coach, and they had mentioned to us that we need to track the percentage of successful passes, which is forward, backward, and how do we look at the entire percentage, or how many were successful. So when we looked at the passing, we found out that on an average, it was always about 85 to 86%, in the first 4 or 5 games. But we still could not figure out where were we going wrong. Then when we actually looked at all the videos again, we found out one common element. It's not about passing the ball, which is the problem. It's all about holding the ball and keeping possession of the ball. So that was a very important learning, and that's something which we figured out after 4 to 5 games. And then we implemented one more parameter in terms of loss of possession, and that was something which kind of caught our attention. And then we saw that in a game, on an average, we were losing the ball about 15 or 20 times from a position of strength. The pass is completed, but after the completion of the pass, the player either loses the ball through a tackle, or the player actually hits it out of bounds, or makes a wrong interception somewhere. So I think that was something which was quite a great learning. And then we implemented that and used it for showing the players that boss, it's not about just passing the ball correctly, but it's also about holding the ball. So then the coach started working on possession games and kind of looking to hold the ball, and how do we keep it within our circle and not give it away. So that was quite interesting. So that was a live example from what I mentioned. And then how do we evaluate performance? First is a live observation. Then there is data analysis and reports. And then there is video analysis and review. And again, this is something, and this is where actually the high quality evaluation happens. So every game, first the coach sees it live, the way it is happening on field. And that's also a very good bird's eye view of, what's happening on the field. When it's football, there's something, okay, there's a question. Let me just check the chat window. Apart from cricket and football, how much analysis is being used in other sports, and how can we learn more about the analysis? Hardly. Okay. I see that this question has come from somebody from Huddle. All right. So I think there's a lot of analysis. Cricket and football, I'm just using it as an example now because I've worked in those two areas. But again, there's a lot of technology being used in even Kabaddi. There's video analysis being used in badminton. It's being used in hockey. So, there's a lot of things which is happening. So how do we learn is basically how do you need to kind of get in touch with certain coaches or analysts who are working in that arena, maybe do an internship with them, maybe join Huddle for why not join Huddle and see if you can learn more about the other sports apart from cricket and football. Who's the best coach for a player? A coach who has taught from childhood, or a coach who is coaching him or her currently? I think that's a slightly difficult question or a hypothetical question. I won't be the best person to answer that honestly because I'm not a coach per se. I mean, I have an ICC accreditation, but I'm not coaching currently or actively. But yeah, I think if you ask me, it's a mixture of both. I think, but the guy who has taught the person from childhood, that is the guy or the girl or person who has the most influence on the player, because that's where the player learns technique. The player learns a lot of aspects of the game. The current coach, again, coaching is a very subjective thing. It's all about understanding what not to change and what to understand as a strength of the player, and how do we kind of fine tune those finer elements to kind of make the player better. You cannot teach an 18-year-old or a 20-year-old a new technique suddenly and expect them to kind of come back and bounce back and show that right away. It takes time, because you need to unlearn whatever you've learned from childhood days. So obviously that's a very, very big challenging aspect. But what I'll say is that how do you fine tune and play to the player's strengths, and that's something which you kind of get to see nowadays. You see the Virender Sehwags, how they play, right? So I'm sure that if you would have heard that famous story about Greg Chappell trying to teach him footwork and trying to ask him to put his front leg in the forward and stretch it, and then try to defend the ball or drive the ball. But we all know after that what happened. He never listened to him, and we all know what kind of a player Sehwag was. So it's like I said, it's coaching is all about understanding each individual player's strength and then working upon it. Yeah. So coming back to this, live observation, data analysis and report, and video analysis and review. This is how the high quality evaluation happens. Okay, so the most important aspect, and I think a lot of you guys have a question around what does a performance analyst do? Who is a performance analyst? So I think I'll just try and address that here. Okay, there's some more questions. Many say that to get into a sports industry, be it sports analyst, coaching, scouting, everything other than a professional athlete, we need to have a network inside the sports industry to get a career. So I think there's two ways to look at it. This question, it's an interesting question for sure. I did not have a network. I did not have an insider in the sports industry to kind of look forward to. Honestly, it was all self-driven networking, if I could say so. The advantage that I had was I used to play a sport. I used to play cricket at the league level or the club level or the corporate level. So, that kind of kept me abreast with the game. That kind of kept me motivated. And, from there, I use LinkedIn effectively. I use social media effectively to kind of get in touch with a lot of people to understand, how, what and how they are doing stuff. And, there were a few companies back then who are doing something in cricket specifically. So, that's how I got in touch with them. And what I'll advise all of you is that see a lot of guys even today they also come to me, and I never say no, or I never deny an opportunity to kind of mentor somebody. I never ignore somebody's request. I always try to guide them by giving them a heads up that this is what you need to do. What I did is something which I can share with you, and I'm not trying to boast about myself, but I'm just giving you an example of what I did. When I used to write to people, specifically on LinkedIn and stuff, I realized that, like me, there'll be so many other guys who would be wanting to do something similar, right? Where is my differentiation? What do I need to do to kind of look different? What do I need to do to stand out from the crowd, in a positive way, and, make myself heard, make myself seen, by people. So what I did was, and since I mentioned cricket was my first love, and, I used to play a lot of cricket. So I actually made a presentation of sorts. For example, there was an India versus Sri Lanka test match going on. This was, I think, 2010. And what I figured out was, a lot of people just claim that they love sport, they love cricket, and they want to be an analyst. But what I thought was going one step ahead and showing people that what can I do as an analyst, right? So I did not have any software back then to work with, and what I just did was picked up an Excel sheet, made a table of a lot of data points. For example, bowler, batsman, ball type, in swing, out swing, off spin, leg spin, blah blah blah, length, outcome, boundary, single, whatever, right? So I made a complete list of the parameters or the outcomes of what's happening in the game. And ball by ball, I actually took one full day to kind of feed in data into an Excel sheet. That's a lot of donkey work that I did, but it kind of helped me because at the end of the day, I had a lot of rich data to work with. So I use that Excel sheet, and using that Excel sheet, I did some calculations, that did some analysis, a very amateurish analysis, if I could say so, using Excel sheets. But then, a lot of rich data was derived from that. And what I did was I actually used it to make a presentation. And that presentation actually made a lot of difference because I realized that before that, when I used to write to people, I never used to get a very I never used to get a great response back. It was like, okay, yeah, so what? That's the kind of response I used to get. But then after looking at that presentation, a lot of the guys started responding back to me positively. At least, they used to give me feedback, or they used to say, wow, that's a great presentation. We really like what you have done. And, at least that kind of made it a starting point for me to kind of get noticed by people. So what I'll advise you guys, if you are looking to make career out of it, is try and nowadays there's so many other tools as well. There's Tableau, there's so many other things that you could do. You could use R programming, Python if you're a programmer and stuff. I'm not one, but I'm just suggesting that if you guys are into that domain, use all that knowledge to kind of come up with your own analytics tool or your own analytics piece to kind of impress people, and then put it in a presentation. Maybe use the current India versus Australia series, or if you're a footballer, use the ISL or any other football league to kind of show some data to coaches or to other teams, to get noticed. Do companies like Crickbuzz or cricket boards like BCCI, CA use their own database, or is there an official database of ICC? So again, it depends. There's a lot of companies which do analytics from the backend. They also provide software for doing analytics. So there is okay. I'm just coming to that part. Let me just address that by using this performance analyst slides. I'll come to that. How do we do that? Can we be an analyst for more than one sport? Yes, you can. All right, let me just, okay.
Also, I feel that, like a lot of students come to me as well with the same question. What I feel is that building the personal brand, as you mentioned, building a personal brand in the industry
Yep,
is very, very important.
yep.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
you need to do your own analysis. And as Venu mentioned, put up PPTs, put your work on Twitter, on LinkedIn.
Yep,
This would
yep.
help you getting noticed in the industry.
Yeah, that's right. An interesting question here. Is there any college or university specifically teaching sports technology and analytics? And what's the eligibility? Again, so there are a few sports management universities doing that thing as well. Plus, I think, if I'm not wrong, Aditya, Mad About Sports, we are coming up with one, right? Soon for teaching analytics and
Yes,
technology. Yeah,
yes,
correct.
absolutely.
Yeah, so I think Aditya will give you some heads up of that after the webinar. So you could get in touch with him. He'll be sharing a link with you. I'll be conducting one for sure, I think sometime in February. And yeah, you could get in touch with Aditya for that as well. All right. Was there something which I missed? Can a guy not so good with numbers be an effective sports analyst? So here's how I'll answer that. I'm not a guy who's good with numbers per se. I'm not a finance guy. I'm not a mathematical genius or something. But what I will say is that you need to have a good understanding of how numbers can solve a problem. I won't say that you have to be number crunching all the time. It's not an accounting job. Being an analyst, it's all about, and it's more than numbers as well. It's all about understanding the event. The visual, the video versus what's happening with the numbers. So it's a combination of both. So I won't say you have to be really good at numbers, but I mean, you can't be bad as well. But you need to just understand from a perspective of how does that fit into the coaching element. Okay, so quickly coming back to the presentation, the performance analyst. Who is a performance analyst? And this is something which a lot of people ask me. A lot of guys have a questions about, and I've just put it into very, very simple terms. All that a performance analyst does is this. He's basically a chief information officer in my view. All that the performance analyst does is collect all the relevant information around a game, around a tournament, around a team, around a player, and then hand it over to the coach or coaching staff, or to the management. I think it's a very underrated role, honestly, because obviously performance analysts cannot take credit for a team's success, or failures as well, But the point is that they are the backbone of the team, because we are living in the information age right now, and there's so much of data, so much of information flying around. How does one make sense of that information, and how does one collect all that information? That's where the performance analyst role comes into the picture. So what is the analyst role? I think I'll just break it down to very simple elements. What does the analyst do? And this is something which even I used to do when I was working with Bharat FC or the Maharashtra Premier League. I think the first and foremost thing is, before getting into a tournament, check this team schedule. Find out about whom the opponents are, who are the opponents whom we are going to play next. Researching stats and compiling videos of opposition teams and players. This is something which I used to do with my coach at Bharat FC every time, because he used to ask specific things about what the opposition players are doing. He used to ask me about who is taking their attacking corners, how is their formation in defending corners, what is their overall team formation, in football, in terms of it's 4-4-2, 4-3-2-1, how are they playing and stuff. And we used to come up with a video-based presentation for pre-match briefing, which is more strategic and tactical. Most important element, I think this is another thing which you need to understand as an analyst. You need to be good with cameras, because you need to film the game in certain situation. In cricket, it's very easy being an analyst, because first is that you get a complete broadcaster feed, which is brilliant to work with, and you have a bit of a gap between two deliveries. So obviously there's a lot of time for the analyst to take a breather when he's keying in the data, he or she. For football, it's slightly difficult, because we never used to rely on broadcaster feed, because the broadcaster feed is slightly different to work with. They focus predominantly on players specifically, or the ball, whereas the coach or the analyst, we wanted a complete bird's eye view of the football pitch. For example, we wanted to see where the players are standing in formations, and how is the ball being transferred from the defensive third to midfield to attacking third. So that was the overall thing that we had to see. And broadcasters sometimes used to focus on the the crowd, the coaches, or the ball in general. So that's something which we could not work with. So that's why we used to have our own feed, which we used to analyze the game from. So that's another thing which the analyst does in certain occasions. So it's also a part of the role which is slightly underrated. You need to be a good climber. You need to find good vantage points on stadiums, and climb the rooftops and go and strategically place the camera there, and get a good feed. So that's another thing which I used to do. And if you're aware of Pune, there's a stadium called Balewadi Stadium where we used to play the football games, and I used to stand on the asbestos rooftop, and it used to be pretty shaky, but then you have to find a few bricks to kind of place the tripod, and then try and film the game from there. And that view was excellent, because that kind of gives you a bird's eye view of the entire game. Most important element after filming the game: coding or tagging the game through a software, and looking for opportunities, missed chances, converted chances, positives, areas of improvement, as well as individual stats. This is the most important aspect of an analyst. This is what the analyst does. Using the software, and when I say coding or tagging is basically, you see an event happening on video and then you tag it. For example, this is my team, India is playing, India made a positive, successful pass. I tag it as a successful pass, and that tag, and that video is kind of linked together. So when you show it to the coach, you can actually show just instances, not the entire game. Showing the game to the coach, key stats, videos, moments, and preparing feedback for players, giving players individual videos and performance indicators. Yes, that's another thing which we do. Important question, guys. This is what you guys have been asking. Again, credentials or qualifications to be an analyst. It's a slightly subjective area or a topic, because certain countries have provisions wherein only qualified coaches or ex-players can become analysts, or people who have played the game at a certain level, or who has done some kind of coaching credential. But whereas in India, or even in some other places as well, we don't need to be a coach to become an analyst. That's what I feel. If you have really good understanding of the sport, and that's the first and foremost point in this slide. You have to have extensive knowledge of a particular sport of his or her choice. And that is the most important aspect, right? If you don't have passion for the sport, if you don't have knowledge about the sport, right, then you're not qualified to become an analyst, because the coach will figure out and find out the first day itself that this guy doesn't understand sport, this guy doesn't understand cricket or football, what's happening. So you need to be aware of rules, regulations. You need to be aware of statistics, what is important in the modern day coaching standpoint, what does the broadcaster show every time, and what do you need to understand from those analysis point of view and stuff. So how do you develop that? I think the way I developed this is basically looking at watching sport day in and day out. I watch a lot of cricket, and not just the sport which is going on, the action which is going on the field, but I also watch a lot of videos or analysis sessions done by all these commentators and stuff, pre-game or post-game, or even on YouTube and stuff. How do you analyze technique? How do you understand where the game was twisted in some other team's favor and stuff? So those are the key elements that you need to understand. Second point is important, sound knowledge of computers and peripheral devices, video camera, TV tuner cards, converters. And I think this is something which you can gather on the way. I don't expect people to understand this from day one. Obviously, this is something which you will understand on the job as well, because a lot of things are different for different sport, for different teams, how they use these peripheral devices and computers. I figured out a lot when I started working with Huddle or Sports Tech back then, and also when I started working with a team, I used to understand how this specific camera works, and how this TV tuner card works, and how is the best way to kind of get the video onto my laptop. Third and most important point, guys, and I think this is again a very, very underrated skill: communication and listening skills. This is where it's a very important element when it comes to being an analyst. I'll give you an example. So when I worked with Bharat FC, and even when I worked with a couple of other teams, the coaches used to be spread across. One was from England, from Yorkshire. One was from Montenegro, which was formerly Yugoslavia, and so there are so many varieties of people coming into the picture, and what you need to understand is everybody has different cultures, different communication, different way of speaking. So I think you need to be able to understand what the coach or the coaching staff is telling you. So I'm sure a lot of you guys must have known about the famous Yorkshire accent, right? When Jeffrey Boycott used to come on air and say, my mom would be lining up to play that, yeah, this is cricket, this is struggling, is this guy struggling? And, that's the kind of accent that he used to have, right? So when my coach came in at Bharat FC, so he had the same Yorkshire's accent. So, he was like, first day he used to tell me, hey, Venu, let's go for a run. And, I'm going to get some money from my bank. And I was like, I wasn't able to understand what he was saying. But then since, I used to listen very carefully, then I used to understand, okay, this is what he means. So I think communication and listening is very, very important, because, every coach has a different way of working. And, as an analyst, the first and foremost thing that you need to remember is that, you are just an enabler there. You're not the coach. You're not there to tell the coach what to do. You are just an enabler. You're there to present facts and figures and data. You cannot tell the coach that this is what we need to do. This is what the team needs to do. That's the coach's job, So your job is predominantly being an enabler. Technology itself is an enabler. It's not something which is overpowering the coaching staff or the team, right? It's just an enabler to make better decisions, And classic instances when I was working with Kings 11 Punjab in the IPL, right, as a part of an organization. So that was 2011, I think, and Michael Bevan was the coach, the famous Australian cricketer. So I had a bit of a showdown with him. I won't say showdown, but it's kind of I was getting too excited when I was making a presentation to him, and and then at an instant he saw me and asked me, so now you're trying to teach me coaching, is it? So I was like, oh my god, did I kind of cross the line there and talk too much and show my enthusiasm in a way that it's kind of offensive? So those are the things that you need to learn, and you need to be always respecting the coach and his or her decisions, and you have to just pass on the data or the information. You cannot overpower the coach and say that this is what we need to do, or you cannot talk directly to the players and say that, this is what you're doing right or wrong. That's not your job. That's the coach's job. All right, guys, some reports and KPIs. Okay, before coming to this, let me just check. There are a couple of more questions, I believe. All right. Yeah, I think that's a good starting point, using Power BI. Yeah. Software names, I think there are multiple softwares. Again, in cricket, there are a few companies which I'll talk about at the end of this presentation. You could approach them as well. Is there a difference between a video analysis and performance analyst? If there is, what is it, and what among this? I mean, it's the same according to me. They're called by both names: video analysis, performance analyst, video analyst. So it's pretty much the same, in my opinion, at least. Some of the reports and KPI. So the one on top, the football one, is what I made for Bharat FC. Cricket is something which I worked with a company called Sports Insight. And that was a cricket report. There's also biomechanics, which is, and this is predominantly what a video analyst does. But again, this requires a bit of coaching knowledge, because, this is all about techniques. This is all about understanding sport in detail. So this is where probably coaching might be handy, because unless you are a coach, you won't understand technique. Analyst's perspective: an event happening once is an incident, an event happening twice a possible coincidence, but an event happening more than twice is basically a trend. And I think this is where, as an analyst, you need to understand, what is a trend. However, as analysts, just like a proper detective, we are not supposed to believe in coincidences. So, you should always dig deep and understand, what's happening in the sport. I'm just giving a few examples. I'll just breeze through these. I don't want to spend too much time on these. These are some of the pre-match briefings that we used to do at Bharat FC. This is something which I used to make with PowerPoint, and show the coach, game analysis, team formations, and these are just examples. Possession statistics. I don't want to dig too much deep into statistics, because again, that's a part of the course that we might do later on. Today is just a high-level overview. Game stats, set pieces, goalkeeper save cards. So these are what you're seeing right now is basically just stats, but in the software, you will have stats plus video combination. So if you click on a particular stat, for example, guys, if we are watching from Huddle, we used to use Sports Code, for Bharat FC. So Sports Code is a software which we used to, use for all tagging of videos. So it used to give you videos plus statistics. I don't want to go into these videos right now because, like I said, those are a part of the advanced course that we are having. These are some of the popular sports technology companies. Sports tech, which I used to work with, is now called as Huddle. There's Prozone, there's Catapult, there's Synergy Sports. Sports Mechanics is one of the old timers in cricket. Kadamba Technologies also is pretty much there in cricket. There's Boomstat Analysis out of Australia, which does a lot of analytics on the cloud, which is an interesting platform. Maxport, Video Observer. So yeah, there are multiple companies in this space. What I'll advise you is that do a bit of research, do a bit of scanning of the market, try and see if you are a booming if you're a budding analyst, if you can get an internship to work with some of these companies, or if you can get to work with these companies to understand how analytics is done in sport. Next topic, guys, athlete tracking, use of wearable devices in sports. And this is where I'll probably use some of my experiences from Catapult. I'll be using some of their things that they show to the customers. How is it important? It's a kind of a 3-in-a-box approach: performance analysis, strength and conditioning, and injury prevention. I think that's something which is kind of very, very important, because if you look at it, it's kind of encompassing everything. You're looking at the player performance through videos. You're looking at strength and conditioning. How do you kind of make your players better? And you are looking at injury prevention as well. And I think that's the most important element in today's day and age, kind of understanding how do we prevent injuries, because sport has become so professional and so much stressful on the player's body, because, you're traveling literally every day in a tournament like an IPL, right? So how do you make sure that you have the most fit players on the field? So that's something which, these technologies tell you. What are the wearable technologies doing? I'm taking an example from Catapult. Again, this is all available publicly in their website and stuff. You have a wearable technology device, which you see on the left. It's basically something that you fit in your sports vest that they provide inside, between your shoulder blades. And this is something which you wear inside your jerseys, the match jerseys. And what you get at the end is analytics and reports. What does the technology entail? It has a high-speed processor because for processing real-time information. It has a battery life up to 6 hours. It has an antenna which uses GPS locations for data tracking. The three important inertial sensors that they use is basically a 3D accelerometer. They have a gyroscope and a magnetometer. What does an accelerometer do? As the name suggests, acceleration and deceleration. That's something which they measure. Gyroscope is basically a 3D axis spinning wheel looking at change in directions of a player. Magnetometer is basically a compass which tells you which direction the player is going towards. Important element is they also have HR monitor, which is a heart rate monitor, which tells you a bit about internal load. All the other factors tell you about external load as well, but this tells you more about internal load on the body. How do you make informed decisions about your players? You have a wearable device, you have reports and analysis, you have a coach, and then you look at that data, and then you minimize injury risk, rehabilitate, and maximize performance. These are some of the information derived from the Catapult device, which I used to work with teams. You have distance, acceleration, deceleration, change of directions, and multiple things like player load. Player load is something important, which is a formula which was proprietary for Catapult. They used to use it to kind of measure the aggregate value of the entire effort put in by a player in all three axes, which is forward, backward, right and left, and then up and down. So there was a proprietary formula that they derived for player load. And why it is important is basically, I'll give you an example, right? Let's take a football game, right? If you say player A has run, say, 13 kilometers in the game, and player B has run, say, 9 kilometers in the game. So is it fair to say that player A has done more job than player B? Is that a fair analysis? I mean, if you look at it in totality, it may not be, because again, this is how we look at player load, because player A might have done a lot of long distance running here and there, but player B might have actually done a lot more in terms of intensity, right? So player A had more volume, player B had more intensity. Player B had done constant high sprinting in the midfield, and then stopping, turning, jumping, and multiple things that will actually add to the player load element, whereas player A would have done more of jogging from point A to point B, if he is a winger or something. So those are the kind of analytics which are derived, and which gives you a complete perspective of what each player has done. So that's the important aspect to look at. I'll just quickly look at the chat window. Okay, nothing more now. All right. How do we monitor this? It's kind of real time as well as post. Real time gives you certain statistics which can be actually even used. So FIFA allows real time stats to be delivered to the desk, where the analyst is sitting. And you can actually use that data to look at, say, player substitution, because if you have, say, a considerable amount of data to suggest that, after these many kilometers or after this much of time, a player starts getting fatigued or tired, that's the best time to replace him or her. So that kind of data can be definitely used real time. Post-match data is something which you can definitely look at, understanding the load on the player's body. So each game is different, each venue is different, weather conditions are different. So how do you understand in what perspective, what player has done, so what the player has done. So the best way to look at it is, looking at the stats in game as well as in training. So in training, the stats will give you something which is more closer to what he or she will do during the game, and then you can understand what is the load on the player's body. Why do you need athlete tracking? And again, these are very principal questions that we need to answer. How hard was today's session? How did it compare with yesterday's session? How did it compare with my overall plan? So how do you measure that? That's what these kind of devices help you doing that, because a player might come and tell you at the end of the day, today I'm very tired, but ultimately it might be, the tiredness might be because of some other reason. It may not be because of just what he did on the field. It could be because of the weather. It could be because he's carrying an injury. Then you can actually do a comparative analysis that if he did X number of kilometers yesterday, or if he did X number of sprints yesterday, why did he do less today? Is there a niggle that he's carrying? Is there something else? Is there a psychological reason? Heart rate? You can check everything. Who was my hardest worker today? Who was my least hardest worker today? Okay, I have a question, I believe. With so much of technologies, Team India could not manage injuries in Australia. Your opinion on the same, please. Interesting question. And again, what I will say is that what happened on the Australian tour is basically a bit of an outlier. It's an anomaly because of the fact that last year whatever happened due to COVID is something which we cannot compare with whatever happened year on year before that, because a lot of these players were under lockdown. A lot of these players, for a fair share of the entire year, say almost about 7 to 8 months, they did not have access to training facilities. They may have done gymming at home, a bit of running here and there, but being in the competitive environment, being in that kind of a setup, they say that always whatever you do in the nets is different than what you do on the pitch, right? So there's nothing like game training or game practice. So I think that's something which has definitely been a hindrance, especially for the faster bowlers, because the fast bowlers, it's a completely different animal altogether. It's something which takes a lot of toll on their body, and that's why those soft tissue injuries may have come up. Plus, they had a 3 month long IPL. They were living in a bio bubble, so there are multiple things which have come to the picture. And I think that's a very relevant question. But what I will put it up to is basically it's a combination of what happened because of COVID last year. Whereas with the more cricket you play, the more better your body becomes, right? The more sport you play, the more your body is acquainted to kind of challenges. It works both ways. The more you are susceptible to injuries as well, but it also readies your body. So that's another thing which I'll put it down to. So that's why people are having hamstring injuries, people are having soft tissue injuries and stuff. How can we push our guys without overloading them? That's the most important aspect, guys. How do we kind of understand what the players have to do, and how do we not risk them for injuries? Because if whatever you are doing during training, that tells you a bit about how much of load can a body take. And that's also the beauty of sport is that that's also different for different players. Then you need to understand how much should we load the players without kind of risking their injuries. Which are my best players ready for the game? That also tells you a story. Which players are ready. Are my injured players back on track? So I think this is something very important, because with all this data, you will have a lot of information around what was the player's performance during pre-injury stage, and then what is the player's stage now. So how is he coming back on track, so in terms of rehabilitation? That's an important aspect here. Again, this is something which I already spoke about. How much did we work versus how hard did we work? How much did we work is volume? How hard did we work is intensity? I won't get into too much of details for this. This is more of strength and conditioning specifics. So, it may not be relevant. Again, this is also, like I spoke earlier, how did today's session compare with the team, with positions, with drill and players? That's something which you can create a point of reference using these tech. When you see periodization, this is again something which you could do. It's dependent upon each sport, each coach, how they want to do it. Match day -4, volume is kind of volume and intensity are kind of hand in hand. As you kind of approach the match day, the volume goes down, the intensity goes up. That's generally how coaches look at it. You have something known as chronic load and acute load. The chronic load is a load that the player is carrying from the last 35 days. Acute load is, it's in the last 7 days. That also tells you a story about where the injury levels are, or the load levels are for the player. I don't want to get into that. Yeah. So this is benefits of using advanced technologies in sport. It's an evidence-based coaching and learning approach. Why do we say it's an evidence-based coaching and learning approach? Because you're not just talking out of thin air. You are actually showing an evidence in the form of a video or a stat which complements the video, and then telling the player or the coach that this is what is happening. So as a coach, it kind of increases my credibility, because I can actually go and tell a player, what is happening on the pitch, and this is what you're doing. And if I just go and tell him that, boss, this is not working, maybe you could do this, you could do that, it's kind of giving a feedback, but that feedback is not supported with any evidence to show. When I say evidence, not in a negative way, but at least, a visual way of learning is always the best way of learning. How do we monitor and improve performance? That's also something which can be used for looking at, video analysis and performance analysis. Coaches and players are more accountable. Again, this is where accountability comes into picture. Coaches feel more accountable for doing their job and showing the players what's happening. Players are more accountable because they know that the coaches and the entire team is watching what's happening. So they also feel obliged to kind of give it their best all the time. They have nowhere to hide as well. Franchise owners have full access to reports, videos, highlights for each game. So again, that's also giving them complete 360-degree feedback. I think I have some question coming up. Is the diet plan of a player also part of the analysis? it's something which, again, I'm not a strength and conditioning expert or a physio to give an expert opinion on this, but again, this is something which definitely is a part of the analysis, because a lot of sport require players to be of a certain body type, in terms of weight, in terms of height and stuff, in terms of the physical structure and stuff. I wish to ask you whether the wearable GPS devices vary from outfield players and goalkeepers. Yes, that's a very good question. Definitely, yes. I think Catapult also had a device called as the G5, which is for goalkeeper specific stats. It gives you certain more aspects in terms of the jumps that they do from left to right, and up and down and stuff. So, good question. Yes, it happens. Yes, there is a difference in devices. Okay, guys. So I think we are. I'll just quickly breeze to fan engagement. This is something which I'm currently doing with Fanisco. Um, there are a lot of analytics derived out of this for fans. If you are into sports marketing, and if you are looking at joining a club as a marketing guy or an events guy or something like that, or in the operations team, this could be of interest to you as well. How do we look at the evolution of sharing information in sports? Right now, I'm just going a little backwards here. It started off with newspapers, then it started off with websites, then it was all about statistics, video analysis, performance analysis, player tracking, GPS track. And now, if you see the new revolution, and I'm sure all of you young guys watching this will agree that, mobile apps, social media, it's created a kind of a revolution of sorts in sport. So everybody is consuming sports content, in the form of mobile applications, in the form of OTT, live streaming and stuff. So it has evolved, beyond, what we could imagine, say 10 years back. So that's how the evolution of sports has happened. The only constant which has changed remarkably, and this is actually a paradox of sorts, is the fan. Why do I say that? Because, there are multiple ways of looking at fans. Our fathers and our grandfathers would have had different way of looking at sports. They would go and watch the game live. Even I would love to do that as well, right? But then today's modern day fan, has become completely different. He or she will have multiple avenues to look at sport. They may not want to go to the stadium, or they may not even want to watch it live. They might just want to watch the highlights package, or key moments during the game, or chat on social media with their friends about what's happening by just looking at the score line. So that's how the fandom has kind of changed. Yep. So what's the impact of a diehard fan? The diehard fan dictates the way the business of sport is played and presented. Sports and players exist because of that one single entity, the fan. And fans actually create an ecosystem for entertainment and obviously generating dollars. Modern day fan follows, comments, and shares content, demands exclusivity, wants to be the best amongst his or her peers. Again, this is something which is very, very relevant, because I'm sure all of you who are consuming sport are looking at following, commenting, sharing content, and you want that exclusivity, that I am the diehard fan of this team. You want to be known in your amongst your peers that I'm the guy who actually loves this sports person or this team, and I'm the biggest fan. That's how the modern day fan looks at the sports. Looks at sport. So how do we leverage what the fan can offer? Engagement, monetization, and innovation. That's something which we look at. And again, sponsorship and revenue opportunities. What do we do at Fanisco? And I'm just talking about Fanisco, which I'm currently working on right now, the project. We are looking at identification, engagement, retention, and monetization. That's the 4-step approach that we have, the 4 pillars of fan engagement: onboarding, engaging, and rewarding fans. I'll just quickly browse through this, and I don't want to touch too much upon this in this element of the webinar. We can do this afterwards when we have the entire course. We have mobile applications that we build for teams. We have social augmented reality. We have gamification and stuff. So that's something which we offer. These are some of the gamification elements that we do, which is then we have leaderboards and badges and loyalty points for fans. And I'm sure you would have seen a lot of apps nowadays having all these things, right? So that's one way of doing fan engagement. I think augmented reality is kind of the future, because these mixed reality experiences, they are playing a key role in terms of fan engagement in today's modern world. You can even do that using social media. If you see Instagram, okay, here's a shout out for you guys. Go to ATK Mohan Bagan's Instagram page or Chennai NFC's Instagram page. There you will see Fanisco, they have developed a few social augmented reality filters. So you just need to click on the smiley icon, go and try that filter out, and you will get actually a filter on your face. How do we get sponsors involved? This is the monetization part of it. You see the sponsor logos on the bottom, and that's how you kind of get sponsors to get involved with gamification. And this is how the teams and clubs and leagues make money out of fan engagement. How do we monetize? Advertising, sponsorship, loyalty and rewards, and then e-commerce. You could even buy and your merchandise and team jerseys and everything online. So that's how you do fan engagement and e-commerce. Just a few elements of fan analytics, how many users have downloaded, content engagement, gamification, performance, and stuff. So yeah, so I won't dig too much deep into this. I just wanted to give you a brief overview of fan engagement. And yeah, that's about it. So this is my contact detail on email and on social media. You guys feel free to get in touch with me on LinkedIn or on email or on Twitter if you have something to tweet about. If you like the webinar, please do mention this on social media handles. If you want to talk to me separately or get mentorship, talk to Aditya. He'll be telling you more about it.
Definitely. And if you guys want to connect with Venu over LinkedIn, so like I definitely help you with that. I have posted on LinkedIn as well. So guys, we'll be wrapping up the webinar now. Just a couple of things which I wanted to talk about. So Venu, if possible, can I share my screen?
Yeah, of course. Let me just stop sharing mine.
Yeah.
Yep.
So guys, as many of you asked this question, where what kind of courses we provide, and what kind of mentorship or course details you would expect from Venu. So basically, we are coming up with a course with Venu, and that's what I wanted to show you guys. It'll just take 3 to 4 minutes. So stay with us, and towards the end of the webinar, I'll also talk about the certificate details and about the feedback as well. So both of it is very, very important to us, and just wanted to talk to you guys about it. So firstly, talking about the course. So we are coming up with a course on sports analytics and technology with Venugopal, with Venu. So here are all the details about the course. So we are right now offering a flat 50% discount on the course. I'll just talk about the price and everything in a moment. So if anyone is registering by tomorrow, we are offering a free 1 month mentorship program with Venu. So like if you feel that, if Venu could help you in landing a job in the industry, or, maybe would help you in making a career, like progress your career towards it, we will be glad to help you out with it with our mentorship program. So that comes complimentary with the course. So what will we be covering? So we'll be covering, things like sports technology, performance analysis, how teams are using it. We'll be covering athlete tracking in details. Like what athletes need to do, what analysts need to do, with the variable technologies in order to track injuries better in all forms. We'll also be talking about the career opportunities which are there available in the field, and how the Indian market is performing, what are the kind of job roles, what are the kind of sports tech companies which hire people in this particular field. This is about Venu. Like as I mentioned, he needs no introduction. He is someone who has been in the industry since the past 15 years, and like he's one of the stalwarts of the industry. So he'll be taking the course completely live online, and there would be no pre-recorded component as such. Everything would be live, and it's going to be a very interactive course. So talking about the duration and stuff, there would be 6 sessions of 2 hours each, so 12 hours of content in total. These 12 hours are live classes. Apart from it, you will be getting some tasks and assignments which you'll have to do it in your off time with your respective groups. We'll be forming groups, we'll be sharing the details for the same as well. And there would be a WhatsApp group. So if you have any questions of the class during the class, you can obviously ask it in the class. If you have any questions of the class, you can always ask us in the WhatsApp group, and we'll be happy to help you out. So all sports enthusiasts, technologists, tech buffs, or anyone who is interested in the field can register for the same. Talking about pre-required qualifications, there are no prerequisites as such from our side. We will be teaching everything from scratch. If you're an MBA student, if you're a BTech student, BCom student, If you are in your class 12, looking to make a career in sports, we are there for everyone. It's you don't need to have any prerequisites as such. No pre-required knowledge in Java, Python, or anything of that sort. So that's it. If you, I'll also be sharing the link to this course page very soon. I mentioned over here, what all we'll be covering in each day. So, digital fan engagement, performance analysis, athlete tracking, video analysis. We'll be covering all of it in details. And also, the classes would be live, but we'll also be sharing the recordings of each and every session. So if someone is not able to attend the live class, they can always attend the a pre-recorded session and then attend the next live class whenever we conduct it. And it's on a daily basis. From it starts on a Wednesday, so Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then again on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So 6 continuous days with a break in between. So there would be a very, very big assignment that we'll be allotting you after day 3, which you will have to do with your groups over the weekend. So that's it. You'll also be getting a shareable certificate. It's a certificate of completion for the course. And now coming to the important part, about the price. So if you go by the industry standards, it should be approximately 12,000 rupees for a course like this. But, we have brought down the course price from 12,000 to 7,999. But further, for the people who are attending this particular webinar, we are offering a further discount, an additional discount of 50%. So there's a coupon code, which is sports at 4,000. I'll be just sharing the coupon code with all of you. If you apply this particular code, the price reduces from 8,000 to 4,000. So this is only for the people who are attending this particular webinar, and it's only applicable till tomorrow midnight. So that's it about this particular course. So if you are interested, you can definitely enroll for it. I can guarantee you, this is one of the best particular courses that you'll get in the market. So that's about the course. Now, the second thing would be the feedback. We would love to hear feedback from you. This is something very, very important to us. And that is why, we have posted about this particular session on LinkedIn. If, if you guys liked the session, if you felt that, this added value to what you want to achieve, please, give us feedback on LinkedIn. This would really help us in continuing to give such sessions on a regular basis. We will be coming up with such sessions, like such free sessions as well on a regular basis. And these feedbacks would really help us. I posted the link on the YouTube chat. Please give us feedbacks whenever possible. I'll be posting it on the WhatsApp group as well. And posting about the coupon code and the course link as well on the WhatsApp group. This was it from my side. Now going on to the next part, which is certificates. Like, many of you are expecting, almost all of you are expecting certificates for this course and for this particular webinar. And as we promised, we'll be doing that. So I'll be share this particular LinkedIn post which I shared. Just give us feedback, and message are done on Shubhan's number. We'll be just posting the details on the WhatsApp group. Don't worry about it. The certificate details would be posted on the WhatsApp group, and we'll be sharing the form. You can fill it and you'll get your certificate. So that's it from our side. Thank you guys for attending the session. Please give us feedbacks if you like the session. It would really help us. And do register for the course if you feel that it would add value to you. We would try our best to try and land you a job in this particular industry. So I see a lot of thank yous. Yes. Yes, guys, thank you so much. We really hope that you enjoyed the session. Again, please give us feedbacks. That's it from my side. Thank you, Venu, so much for taking this particular free webinar for the students. I'm sure, going by the YouTube comments, it seems like a very, very good webinar.
Thank you, Aditya and Mad About Sports, for having me. I mean, like I said, it's a pleasure. And I think we would really like to thank all the audience who watched it live and as well as for your questions. And I think most of the questions are very, very relevant and extremely, important questions. If I were you, I would be asking the same questions as well. So thanks, guys, for watching and thanks for getting in touch. I see a lot of requests coming on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. And so, yeah, we'll be in touch. If you enroll for the course, I can promise you that, I'll try my best to help you guys understand the intricacies of performance analysis in detail. And like Aditya mentioned, there'll be more interactivity and assignment based approach instead of me talking in a monologue. So I don't like doing that, honestly. So I love to keep it more conversational as well as more practical, if I could say so. So even, I mean, unfortunately we are living in this COVID time, then we can't do it in person. But then, I'll just give you an example. When we used to do it in Symbiosis, people used to kind of enjoy doing this course because I used to take them to play cricket outside by wearing those catapult devices, because Simbi had a tie-up with catapult. So so that was the level of interactivity and assignment based thing, practical approach that we used to do together. So yeah, looking forward to getting more enrollments. Thanks guys.
Yeah, and like I forgot to mention, Venu. Uh, so Venu is a faculty with Symbiosis as well. So Venu, I think you got muted, if I'm not wrong.
I'm in. Can you hear
No,
me?
no, you're there. Yeah,
Okay.
so to mention, Venu is a faculty with Symbiosis as well. He teaches this particular course in Symbiosis School of Sports Sciences. So yes, I see a lot of thank yous, Venu, for you. Like people have loved the webinar. And regarding the course and the feedback, guys, I'll be just sharing the link on the WhatsApp group right away.
Mhm.
Yes.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, Aditya.
Thank
Thank you
you.
guys. And
Thank you,
all right.
guys.
Good
Bye
night.
bye.
Take care. Bye bye. Bye.
Bye.